Welcome back to the Legends of Inside Sports. I'm your co-host Gary Johnson, and we're here talking with Harold Bell and Tom Nugent. Tom, we want to turn it over to you to talk about your experiences with Ali and the media, any experiences with Howard Cosell, media coverage. Let's turn it over to you, Tom.
Well, I think I was talking to Harold recently regarding a book he's been working on, and we were sharing our memories of that time. I was a younger reporter working on several papers, Detroit and the Baltimore Sun, and so our paths crossed, I mean to say, the cultural trajectory that Ali was on and Cosell and so on. And my personal view of it was that, let's just say, I never had a great deal of high regard for the corporate media. I thought they were lacking courage all the time. I covered a lot of stories about Vietnam, and it became very clear, obviously, during that time, if you had any attention span at all and paid attention, that Vietnam was a tragic mistake. And Ali was one of the first to really give that a voice, which was courageous, of course, and quite insightful for the day. And he took a terrible pounding. As you were saying earlier, Harold, we all now cozy up to Ali, and isn't he wonderful, and it's all great. But I remember, I think it was Joe Garagiola savaging him on it was an NBC morning sports talk show. How dare you go against what the commander-in-chief has said we have to do, and so on and so forth, and you're not loyal, and what's this Islam stuff, and why should we go there with you? You're an American, and all this. It was brutal, and it was ugly, and it was tearing the country apart. And I can remember a lot of angry feeling. He's a traitor. How dare he turn to Islam and against the war? But as that all unfolded, and it became clearer to everyone that we were on a terrible course, of course, his warnings looked better, and then things slowly began to come around. For me personally, since you asked, the corporate media betrayal that went on, especially in the early years of that war, coincided with the betrayal that we saw in Lyndon Baines Johnson, and we saw it in Robert McNamara, who later wrote a book, as you know, I'm sure, that was reviled and scorned when he said, okay, I admit, we didn't do our homework. Mm-hmm. We didn't understand how Vietnam fit into the larger questions of justice and equity and so on globally. We didn't realize that Ho Chi Minh had earned, I think he got his master's degree, it may have been a doctorate, I don't remember, writing at the University of California in Berkeley about Thomas Jefferson and the founding fathers and the whole idea of America as a republic. He idealized them, and when you combine that with facts like ordinary working people in Saigon could not eat in the upscale French-dominated, well, in a sentence, they didn't do their homework. They didn't understand that we had inherited the aristocratic French high-class bias power structure, the remnants of their empire in Vietnam. The whole thing was an absolute immoral, disgraceful chapter in American history. And Muhammad Ali was one of the first people to take the nerve to step forward and say so. And for that alone, he deserves our respect, in my view, permanently. But I'll close in trying to answer your question, Gary, as best I can. The betrayals that went on during that period should not be forgotten. And it's absolutely true that corporate journalism, more often than not, has betrayed and continues to betray the good and the well-being of the nation as a whole. And we must stay ever vigilant about that, like Ali was. Question authority, ask deep questions. These guys cost us 60,000 lives and 2 million Asian lives, and admitted at the end that either they didn't know what they were doing or they did it anyway for the sake of their own careers and their own profiteering. And that's a despicable chapter in our history that Ali spoke up against. That's my take at 72 years old here. I'm turning into the old grouch on the porch, but that's the honest feeling. You know, that's the feeling I have about it as we speak today.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tom, you lived through those times, and so I definitely appreciate hearing your perspective as well as Harold's. But I do want to ask you, from a media perspective, let's fast forward to 2016 and the debates that are going on now. From a journalist perspective, is there enough questions being asked, or I guess I want to ask also, is old-fashioned journalism still being done today?
No, I believe American culture is in a steep nosedive, and this approaching presidential election is, if it wasn't ridiculous and silly, it would be tragic and heartbreaking to see how the decline of American culture has produced these two candidates, and we're supposed to actually review that and make an informed decision about where to go next. I think the country is in great peril. I have 6 grandchildren, and I'm scared to death. I'm just praying that they will right the ship of state. There has been an enormous erosion in our ability as critical thinkers, in education, in the way the universities do research. This is a very dangerous time for America, and I tell you this, the betrayal by the mainstream corporate media, the New York Times performance in signing on for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and absolutely failing to do their job while promoting the Pentagon's view of all of this and the George W. Bush view, is a blot on the record of journalism in the United States. It's absolutely unacceptable. And so I wish I had better news. Yeah. Some good things are being done by individuals here and there, but mainstream corporate journalism, I'm talking New York Times, Washington Post, Chicago Trib, LA Times, is in the tank. And unless we start to ask some hard questions about our culture, we are going to see things in the years ahead. I fear for the country at large. I hope I'm wrong and that it gets better, but I'm just a voice in the wilderness saying, you better look to your knitting. We are on a bad track, and we better fix it.
Well, I agree, Tom. It's no doubt about it. Muhammad Ali was way ahead of his time. I look at my interview that I did with Muhammad Ali in 1974 after the Rumble in the Jungle. How relevant those things are still today, man, when we talk about the state of the black community, the state of racism in this country. That's been almost 40-some years ago, and it's still relevant today. You know, people are not asking the hard questions. You know, Inside Sports was ahead of its time, too. We talked about more than sports. We talked about the game called life. When I look at Muhammad Ali and how he inspired me to be all that I could be, I mean, when I look back at the folks in sports media, I was like the Lone Ranger out there, following in Muhammad Ali's footsteps, man, believing in what he said. And like I said, he inspired me to speak up and speak my mind. And I was able to do that because I had people like Muhammad Ali and Red Auerbach in my corner. I didn't have to go through any agents. I had their home numbers. I knew how to get in touch with them. That's what made Inside Sports different from any other sports talk show in the country. Now, Inside Sports format is copied all over the world. Was nobody talking about racism? They weren't talking about politicians on the air. I did all of that, man. So I have to thank Muhammad Ali, man, for inspiring me to be all that I could be, Gary.
Well, this is great because, Tom, I have not read your entire body of work, but I'm familiar with enough of it that I feel very comfortable saying that as a sports journalist, you embody the spirit of Muhammad Ali, and much like the champ, you have exhibited courage, because you mentioned that earlier in the interview. And I don't know about you, but I define courage as the willingness to act on what you believe to be true. And so you appear to be someone who seriously talk it and walk it. And so I want to thank you for your contributions to media and the statements that you made today. And hopefully they'll take some people will take it to heart.
Well, one of the things too, man. Well, Tom, just going to say this. One of the things, man, is that people always want to hear the truth as long as it's about somebody else. People don't want to hear the truth about themselves, and that is one of the problems that those of us in media who want to get the word out the way it should be, that we're looked upon as troublemakers. Tom, you can pick it up from there.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. That's good to hear, of course. I just think that we've all, as a nation, as a world, obviously, we've got kids right now hungry in Syrian refugee camps. We've got malaria raging. 500,000 kids in sub-Saharan Africa are dying of malaria. Here in 2016, that's not good enough. But before I fall apart in a paroxysm of despair, I think I want to turn it back finally from my end to a hopeful note that comes from Ali. You know, the human race has always faced these challenges, whether we were in the caves or struggling to survive the plague in the Middle Ages or whatever it was. The challenge we have as human beings is here to stay. But the one thing that seems to me that's gotten us through is the kind of joy that he had. And I would like my final comment, if I may, to be about the sheer uplifting joy that man had in his spirit. I used to just laugh and have a good time when he would start that poetry, sting like a bumblebee, float like a butterfly and all that. And he'd bug his eyes way up, and I would think, this guy is having fun. And he's sending a signal that joyful sense of laughter and comedy and people acting together in a way that celebrates their shared humanity across the entire spectrum, that's the energy flow and the meaning and message that will somehow get us through. So that joy he took, when I look at my grandkids and I say, I want them to laugh and feel that joy, even as they have to dig into these terrible problems. And that's maybe the best part of being human. So for that, I thank him most. I'm proud of what he did because he stood up against what he knew was wrong. But I'm also celebrating in him that joyful embrace of just, it says in the good book, you know, I'm not an overtly religious person or any of that denominational, but I sure like it in there where it says, the apostles asked Jesus, how are we going to be able to get to heaven? And he said, remember, you will only enter that kingdom as a little child. Man, that's where it's at as far as I'm concerned. Right. And he had that energy to spare. So Here's to him as we say goodbye to him. Here's to that spirit that I respect and venerate in him.
Okay, Tom, we want to take this time out to thank you, man, for participating here on the Legends of Inside Sports, man. Your participation was so enlightening and educational, even for me, man. It's great to hear that there are thinkers out there just like you. So don't go too far, Tom. We're going to invite you back somewhere down the line because we have a lot of things to talk about when it comes to this game called life. Thank you so much.
You bet. And to both of you, Gary and Harold, good luck with the show. I've enjoyed discussing this very much. I'll get my daughters and grandkids to listen to it carefully, believe you me.
Okay.
And let's hope we can keep on talking in this way. Good luck to you both, and thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're going to take
All
a
right.
break,
Bye-bye.
and we'll be right back to take a look at the Rumble in the Jungle and how I refused to go when one of the biggest mistakes I ever made.